Tonight, NDC members of parliament are outperforming their governing NPP colleagues in the business of serving their constituents, including explaining government policies.
Even going back to say thank you for voting for me as a member of parliament for the first time, they are not doing it. So you don't expect the people to vote for you the next time when you go to them. There's a constituency in Central Region that people say that when the MP comes there to campaign, they will lynch him.
We interrogate the latest controversial University of Ghana political science survey that also names Education Minister Matthew Opoku Prempeh as the people's best performing minister.
This is Top Story with Evans Mensah.
Top Story is always brought to you by Bond Savings and Loans. Your success, our passion, also brought to you by Gasem Cement, the nation builder. Vodafone, the future. A6 exciting, ready, and nationwide health insurance, your healthcare family. Now, the University of Ghana Political Science Department has never shied away from controversy. Well, tonight they are back at the center of another political head splitter. A survey of 27,500 Ghanaians to be exact across the country show that on several indicators, including whether an MP explains government policies to his or her constituents, NDC MPs in fact perform better than the governing MPP colleagues. Let's get into the details now. We'll be speaking to some of the MPs themselves shortly and the researchers. My colleague, parliamentary correspondent, has been pouring through these documents, the survey results, and joins me in the studio. Joseph, let's start with this very controversial question about explanation of government policies.
So, according to those who responded, they indicated that when it comes to those who said yes, there was some effort to explain government policy that they found satisfactory. We saw a situation where, according to those who responded, 17.2% of those who said yes were actually referring to NPP MPs, and 18.9% of those who responded, were referencing NDC MPs.
So NDC MPs, more of them say yes on explanation of the question.
So, per what the respondents indicated, more of NDC MPs, were explaining government policy, 18.9%, than their NPP counterparts, and in that case, 17.2%.
But that is the irony, is it not? I mean, because you think that the governing members, the members of parliament who went to parliament on the ticket of the governing party should be the people doing the explanation.
And so it further deepens the irony. The response on those whose feedback was no, in terms of...
I said no, they
weren't explaining government policies. And with reference to that, according to the respondents, those who weren't explaining government policy, up to 70.2% of them were actually MPP MPs, and when it comes to NDC MPs, only 65%.
So there again, it sort of tallies with the first. That's a huge, significant number. That members of parliament on the ticket of the NPP, and they have the government in power, according to the people, and this is a significant number of respondents, 27,500 of them say the MPP MPs are not explaining government policies. On the reverse question of whether they are explaining, more respondents think the NDC MPs actually do explain the government policies. Than it begs the question, what sort of explanation are these NDC MPs giving on the government policies to their constituents? Is it explanations that further their opponent, the opposition agenda, or the government agenda? I bet to say possibly. I dare to say possibly it's the latter. But if you also look at the question of explanation generally on government policy, you actually find that generally, if you look at both parties, there isn't too much of explaining of the government policy or constituents. I mean, but if you narrow it down to the NPP NDC, there you see the dichotomy. Let's look at some of the indicators. So this is the first indicator that leads to the conclusion that the NDC MPs are outperforming the NPP colleagues. But there are others.
Exactly, there are others. There was the question about whether people are able to communicate with their members of parliament. And with that, there was the broad indication that when it comes to the respondents, up to 59.6% of them said no, they were not communicating with their members of parliament, and 31.5% of them were actually those who said yes, and that there was adequate communication between themselves and their members of parliament.
If you do the party differences, more say, and this is communication, right? And this is a question of your response. Are you satisfied with, if you communicate with your MP, are you satisfied with the responses you get from them? There again, you see the NDC MPs are outperforming the MPP.
Yes, and so there were 31.5% of them who said that yes, they were communicating with the MPs, and the subsequent survey focused on that 31.5% who said yes, the communication was happening. And then that's where the follow-up question came. Are you satisfied with the response if you are really communicating with your members of parliament? And then there was the disaggregation. So those who said yes, they were satisfied with the communication they're getting from the MPs. Listen to this. 76.1% indicated that the reference was to NDC MPs, and 74.9% indicated that the reference was actually to NPP MPs in terms of those who were satisfied.
So let's just say 2% more the margin there. I mean, but again, back down to the basic point. More people say they're happy and satisfied with the response they're getting from NDC MPs and they're getting from the MPP.
And then when you look at the reverse question, the trend continues. Those who indicated that they were not satisfied with the kind of responses that they were getting from the MPs, funny enough, 25.1% of them, the no, you were referring to MPP MPs, and then only 23.9% were referring to NDC MPs. Another more like a little over 1.5, 1.6%.
And another indicator that again continues this trend is the question about holding public fora to explain issues. Again, when the question was asked, you see that there are more NDC MPs who are holding public fora. That's 21.4%. Of the NDC MPs, according to the respondents, say NDC MPs, more of them are holding public fora as compared to MPP MPs, only 17% are holding public fora. But there's also an interesting thing about constituency offices. You actually find on that question that more MPP MPs have constituency offices, but when you come to how often MPs visit the constituency office, you actually then find that although the MPP MPs have more offices, the NDC MPs visit the offices more than the NDC MPs. So, for example, you see they ask how often the MP visits the constituency office. Never, and the question of never comes to the constituency office. On MPP, 10.6% say they never come. The NDC MPs, the MPP MPs never come. Only 8.2% say they do come. I mean, for NDC. So there the figure is higher for those who don't go at all to their offices. And if you look at those who go weekly as well. But some may explain this and say the NPP MPs, some of them are in government. They are members of parliament, and so it's far more difficult to go to their constituency if you are in government as well.
And there was also another question about how often your MP actually visits your community. And, there were all the breakdowns about those who visit weekly, bi-weekly, monthly and all. But there was the batch of respondents who said that their MPs have never visited them since they were elected as members of parliament. And again, guess what the trend was?
Tell me.
The reference to MPP MPs, about 45.2% of the respondents were actually referring to MPP MPs as those who never visited them since they were re-elected. They were elected. And then we had a situation of 42.6% indicating that those who had never visited were actually referencing NDC MPs. Again, when it comes to direct meeting between the constituents and their members of parliament, they appear convinced the NPP MPs are not doing.
Now, there are implications. This comes with implications. According to political scientists who did this, the University of Ghana Political Science Department, they believe one of the key implications will be that people will punish the MPs. And the sense is that the MPP MPs will get punished in the next year's elections, parliamentary elections, because of this poor performance that the constituents say they are seeing in them. Listen to the lead researcher in this, Dr. Mensah, speaking at the press conference to put out the findings of the research.
Even going back to say thank you for voting for me as a member of parliament for the first time, they are not doing it. So you don't expect the people to vote for you the next time when you go to them. There's a constituency in Central Region that people say that when the MP comes there to campaign, they will lynch him. They've told us that because you are a member of parliament, you expect to visit the constituency. And as I indicated, you realize that it's people talk about the fund of resources. NDC members are doing better than NPP members at the end of the day. So it's not just a matter of the government doing well and therefore their party is doing well. It's not about that at all. It's when the MPs realize that their power base is their constituency. If you know that your power base is their constituency, then you make sure you do what the constituents want as little as you can, so that they will be happy at the end of the day with you. People are not interested how long the MPs have been in parliament. People are not interested whether their MP is a man or woman, young or old. People are interested in MP who resonate well with the people. And if you resonate well with the people vote for you. If you don't resonate well with the people will not vote for you. They will punish you by voting against you. And I always say that every member of parliament must know that there is a competitor in your party and there's a competitor in the other party. So if it's especially a swing area, then you must work at it as every president movement, else you lose the seat. And the only analysis we did, which we can do, or the only analysis we did was within the partisan level, which party is doing well, which party is not doing well. Because we have very few members of parliament as women who may have challenges or challenges. So if you do that, it will be discriminatory against the women.
So that's a lead researcher, Dr. Mensah, who was speaking to us on the back of the press conference to announce the results of this survey. But there was another fundamental question that was asked that goes to ask the respondents. 27,000 of them mentioned one minister that has done well on the basis of policy and delivery, competency and hard work. Out of that, only 10 names popped up. And the best performing minister on that list was?
Dr. Matthew Opoku-Prempeh, the education minister, up to 12.2% of the respondents mentioned his name. Second was Dr. Owusu Afriyie-Akoto, the
your own minister, because I know you are head of agriculture.
Yes, the good old Dr. Akoto Owusu Afriyie. Yes, 5.3%. John Peter Mbeu, the energy minister, got 4.7% of the respondents.
He got a third mention in terms of third best performing.
The fourth best mention, Alan Chimanting, the trade minister, with 3%. The health minister, Kweku Agyeman Menu, came fifth. Isaac Kwame Asiyama, the eighth, and sports minister, came sixth. Dan Botwe, the minister for regional reorganization and development, he came seventh in terms of the mentions. Ken Ofori-Atta, the finance minister, eighth. Ambrose Derry, the interior minister, the ninth best mention, and then again our good friend Kojo Ponkroma, the information minister, came 10th with 1.3% of the respondents.
I mean, if you put in the context of the president having more than 110 ministers and only 10 names came up, you see everybody in this 10 have done well. I mean, because if on top of people's heads they can mention your name and rank you, they forget the rest. If you are one of those forgotten names, then you know you're doing something wrong. And so if you're on the list of 10, it means that you've done something wrong. Let's go to the phone line. Let's bring in the members of parliament who just joined us on the telephone line. Samuel Okudzeto-Ablakwa is a MP for North Tongue and also a former deputy education minister. Thank you very much, Mr. Okudzeto-Ablakwa.
Thank you, Evans.
Also joining me on the line is Dr. Emmanuel Mafo, is MP for Ofoekrom, and he was actually at the University of Ghana Political Science Department, witnessed the event to outdoor the survey. Doc, thank you for your time, sir.
Thank you.
Are you surprised by the outcome? I'm curious about the question about explanation of government policies, and more of the respondents say the NDC MPs, they answered yes to the NDC MPs than they answered to the MPP MPs. How do you explain that?
Well, let me say a good evening to your cherished listeners, and to say that I am not surprised if you go by the methodology that was used and the kind of interpretation that has been given to the results. And mind you, this is a perception study, and depending on the kind of framework that you use to interpret your data, you may come to such a conclusion. But I'm not surprised. But I think there are fundamental issues that needs to be explained.
Let's talk about them. I mean, at the bottom of this, bottom line, the NDC colleagues are outperforming you in the business of the MP's work. That must be something you must be concerned about.
No, I disagree with that, and I disagree with that because the kind of conclusion that is being drawn from a descriptive statistics that was shown in the study cannot allow anybody to reach that conclusion on the basis of a scientific analysis.
I'm curious you say that because the indicators are clear. Communicate to your MP. More and
No,
more
I'm
are happy.
to that.
Yes.
I'm coming to that. If you wait a minute, I'm coming to that. You see, when you're doing this kind of analysis, and I think I pointed it at the meeting, and then you have an observation where, let's say, 74% against 72%. In a descriptive sense, you will say that more people might say this against that. But you need to, in order to be able to come to a firm conclusion, you need to apply, or you need to subject that kind of result to a statistical test. You have to test for this, whether there is a significant difference, because in statistics we don't just look at the facial values of data and say that because this is 72 and this is 73, you make a conclusion. That is not science. That is not something that we do in rigorous scientific research.
I mean, this is the University of Ghana Political Science Department. Are you questioning their ability to do a proper interpretative work on the research and survey they've done? Because that's their conclusion.
Yes. Sorry. Yes, that is a colleague from the university, but I think I also pointed it out at that meeting. And just to let you know that I'm also a scientist myself, and I have done this kind of research in the university. I've taught in the university myself. And the point I was trying to bring to the attention is that we might be correct to say that in our interview, maybe more of our respondents thought that the NDC MPs were doing better in terms of communication or whatever, but you cannot conclude, because you see, the moment you unless you test for you use the appropriate statistics to test for that, you cannot draw that conclusion. I think this is known to everybody who does science.
Okay, I need to interrogate that a bit more, but I want to bring in your colleague, Okudzeto Ablakwa. Mr. Ablakwa, this must please you.
Well, thank you very much, Evans. Good evening to my honorable colleague on the other side, and to you and all our listeners. Let me begin by commending the Political Science Department for this novel research. I have been poring over the research. I just received a copy, and it appears to be a very thorough job that has been done. Why I commend them is because this is an area which has not been traversed, where members of parliament are being scrutinized, and research takes researchers all the way to our constituencies. And looking at the research before me, they spoke to about 27,500 respondents, or 275 constituencies. That's really, really helpful, and especially as parliamentary primaries are before us soon, it does help members of parliament to know their standing. I am hoping, though, that in future, researches of this nature will also look at how members of parliament vote, how they debate, the level of research and all of that, as happens elsewhere. So it's a good start, and we must welcome this development. Now, having said that, I am quite concerned that if you look at the views of constituents, their perception of the role of the MP, you notice that the research reveals that majority of our constituents still believe that the primary role of the member of parliament is to advocate for development.
Yes.
So that must be worrying. If you look at a region like the Western region, I think that they scored the highest, about 68% of constituents in the Western region, 68.7%, believe that the MP's role is to advocate development. Central region is 59.5%. Greater Accra region, the capital, where you will think that would not really be the perception, is 51.2%. Volta region, 43.9%. So the national average is 50.8%. More than half of the electorate are our constituents believe that we must prioritize development advocacy as opposed to our lawmaking role. And so that presents a challenge, and I'm sure it's because of the nature of our country, the level of development, and how, a lot of basic needs and amenities have not been provided. So members of parliament will be well advised to know how to juggle. Don't just stick to your constitutional role. My constitutional role is to be a lawmaker, and it's for the executive to focus on development. Clearly, this research shows that if you are not balancing and making sure that you are really advocating for development, no matter how people may feel uncomfortable with that is not really the constitutional mandate of the member of parliament. That's the reality on the ground. That's what the people expect you to do. And so you must do that. I must also add that if you look at how the minority MPs are faring very well, I would submit strongly that it's as a result of the hybrid nature of our constitution. Remember that Article 78(1) imposes an obligation on the president to appoint majority of his ministers from parliament. And so a lot of MPs go to parliament to catch the eye of the president to be made ministers. Now, to catch the eye of the president, often they are not as scrutinous. They don't want to step on the toes of the president. And so you notice that it's the minority side which is often doing a lot of the scrutiny, going the extra mile, the research behind the scenes, due diligence, to be able to properly critique government policies, programs, and proposals that are brought to the House. So I'm not surprised that the minority MPs are faring so well.
But if that argument is true, how do you explain the question about explanation of government policy? Because if your argument is true, then it should follow that the MPs, to catch the eye of the president, must be seen to be actually vigorously on the ground doing the government's bidding by explaining to their constituents what the policies are and getting them to buy into it. But they ask the question of the respondents, and most of them actually majority say that they are getting explanation more from the NDC MPs than from their MPP colleagues. That is a strange one.
Well, I don't consider it strange. I think the reverse also applies, because you see, because of this hybrid system, and I must make the point that I have worn both hats. I have worn both hats where I've been a deputy minister and an MP, and now just an MP and not a minister. And so I have lived two lives, and I know that when you are not serving two masters and you are focused now on your legislative role, you have more time for that legislative function. Now, when you are in the majority side, your party is in power, you tend to want to give way for the ministers to lead and to shepherd bills and programs and all of that. So there is a real temptation to, if you like, just defer to ministers. And that breeds a certain complacency. So I'm not surprised that the research shows that there are some majority MPs who are not well versed, because they will normally defer to the ministers. They are just waiting to vote. I mean, I don't want to say this in derogatory terms. I have a lot of respect for the majority side. When I say that they become yes men or yes women, I'm using it in all due respect, that there's a tendency that they are just waiting to add their voices to the vote. And that's what the research is showing. They just defer to the minister. But when you're on the minority side, you have to scrutinize, because you are preparing to, debate, to point out the flaws, and you carry on the debate even in the media with your constituents. So you tend to do more work. You don't have the luxury of leaving it to the ministers who are bringing it from their ministries and who have to shepherd it. So I'm not surprised at all that this is what is emerging. And it is a fundamental deficiency, if you like, with this hybrid system we are operating. I think that the time has come for us to just go the full separation of powers, as Baron de Montesquieu argued many centuries ago, where we have strict separation, and then we can have Parliament carry out its oversight role. When we have that, whether you're on the majority side or the minority side, remember what happened to Liman's budget, after the 79 election.
You can't be rejected by your own members of our Parliament. So that is your fundamental call is we should amend the Constitution to a point where the President appoints people entirely out of Parliament.
Let's amend Article 78 and allow for the President. Let's give the President a free hand. Unfortunately, the Constitution Review Commission agrees with
and yet that recommendation hasn't seen the light of day. Let me bring in Dr. Mafo on it. Dr. Mafo, to the extent that this is a public opinion poll, survey, to the extent that opinions sometimes can translate into real votes in elections, and 2020 is just around the corner, what for you should be the lesson from this for your colleagues on the majority side?
Well, first of all, let me also associate myself very strongly with the views that my colleague expressed. To a very, very large extent, I agree with him. And I think the lessons are clear. First of all, the study clearly shows, and I think it's consistent with earlier studies on the role of MPs, that what we have, our constitutional mandate and what we are de jure expected to do is not what our people expect from us, or that is not their expectation. And therefore, what it means is that we need to stay with reality. We need to find a way to balance the work that we do in Parliament with the work that we're supposed to do also at the constituency. That is very, very important. The other thing is that it has implications for our resource allocation. And for me, I believe that probably we need to begin to, and I'm happy that we have made a proposal to elect MMDCs, because a lot of the development demands that are placed on MPs are done because MPs are the face of government, whether you are in government or opposition. So long as you are an elected representative, majority of the people would expect you to do development projects. And therefore, I think the proposal that we amend the Constitution for MMDCs to be elected will go a long way to help us consolidate the work of Parliament, because then the MMDC will have also the same demands from the electorate like they place on the
members of Parliament. Doc, I'm grateful that you join us with those thoughts, but these are fascinating results from the survey. Okudzeto Ablakwa, I'm grateful also that you join us with those thoughts to call for amendment to the Constitution. It's already there in the CRC report that was issued. I'm grateful to both gentlemen as we begin to scrutinize this a bit more. Want to join us on News 9, which starts right now.